It's Friday, everyone. What do we do on Fridays here at the Hint Hive? That's right, we smash the patriarchy. Hello, my beautiful queens. Welcome back to the Hint Hive, Amplifying Women's Voices. I'm your host, Kelly Hint, psychotherapist, feminist life coach, and apparently now someone who willingly climbed aboard what can only be described as a floating city. Today's episode is a little different. We're taking a break from psychology, patriarchy, and all of the serious topics for an adventure episode. Well, an adventure, a comedy, a cautionary tale, a travel guide, and honestly, a giant lesson about anxiety. Because if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know I openly talk about anxiety. What you may not know is that going on a cruise has always been something my anxiety absolutely hated. My brain had all the catastrophic thoughts. You'll get horribly seasick. You'll be trapped. The boat will rock constantly. You'll panic because you can't leave. What if something happens? My anxious brain had already written an entire disaster movie before I even packed a suitcase. And yet, I went anyway. Not because I wasn't anxious, but because I have learned something incredibly important both as a psychotherapist and as a woman who spent years challenging herself. Courage is not the absence of anxiety. Courage is deciding your values matter more than your fear. So today I'm taking you along on what I'm affectionately calling Misadventures in Alaska, Queen Bee Goes on a Cruise. Spoiler alert, I survived. Actually, I absolutely fell in love with cruising. Now, get comfy and let me take you on a journey. All right, ladies, before we jump in, if you're listening to this podcast and not watching the video version, I strongly encourage you to watch the video instead this time if you want to see the pictures that go along with the episode. You can go to the podcast YouTube page, which is at the Hint Hive, all one word, not my coaching YouTube. Or if you have Spotify, I also upload video to that platform as well. And one last interesting note. While I was writing this episode yesterday, I actually started to cry. I realized that my life has been such chaos since I've returned from Alaska that I haven't even had time to process the trip at all. My husband and I returned to even bigger disasters with my father than the ones we were dealing with before we left. That has been consuming every waking moment of my time, and the joy of the trip was heavily overshadowed. So I had some beautiful moments of reflection as I was writing this. I have never been so grateful for this podcast before. But that goes into a totally different topic with deeper issues that I'll probably never go fully into. So let's get back to Alaska, shall we? Okay. So before we even left, let's begin with the airport disaster. You know those travel days where literally nothing goes according to plan? Yeah, that. Because of delays, I completely lost my entire day in Seattle. I'm not going to go into it all because this episode would be about 4 hours long if I did. My plan had been to explore Seattle, enjoy Pike Place Market, relax before boarding the cruise. Instead, I almost missed the cruise after canceled flights, but finally got the last flight out of Buffalo and stumbled into my hotel in Seattle around 3 o'clock in the morning. At that point, I had been awake for 28 hours. 28 hours. I managed about 4 hours of sleep after getting to my room before waking up to leave for the cruise. At this point, I had absolutely no idea what day it was. No clue what time zone I was in. I honestly wasn't entirely convinced that I was still on Earth. Then, somehow, after almost no sleep, it was time to board a cruise ship. All right, so I did manage to squeeze in a very quick trip to Pike Place Market before boarding. When I say quick, I mean blink and you'll miss it. Seattle deserves more time than I was able to give it this time around. Then came the walk to the cruise terminal, because the guys decided we were close enough to just walk to the ship. With 3 bags per person, up and down what felt like a million flights of stairs. I swear, every staircase in Seattle personally attacked me. And then, just when I thought the morning couldn't get any stranger, I almost tripped over a couple openly snorting cocaine at 10:30 in the morning. Seattle, you okay? So let's talk about boarding the ship. Boarding actually went incredibly smoothly. The only casualty, they made me dump my bottled water. It's kind of like an airport. You can't bring bottled beverages onto the ship. A small sacrifice, I suppose. What shocked me most was realizing I have never owned so much luggage in my entire life. I looked like I was relocating to Alaska permanently. But the second I stepped aboard, everything changed. The stress, the exhaustion, the airport chaos, it melted away. Even the chaos from home was gone. Side note, this is where I began to cry while writing the episode. I just wanted to go back to that moment. I just wanted to feel that carefree joy again and never let it go. Okay, so if you've never cruised before, let me save you from just a couple rookie mistakes. Bring a carry-on. Seriously. You have to check your bags, just like at an airport, and the checked luggage can take hours to reach your cabin. Pack medications, chargers, a change of clothes, swimsuits, anything that you will want immediately before you're allowed to go to your room. Second, if you have Verizon or another carrier that charges international roaming fees, put your phone on airplane mode before you go to sleep the first night. I forgot. Guess who woke up on day 2 to a lovely message about cruise charges? This girl. Thankfully, I caught it quickly. And speaking of planning ahead, I packed motion sickness patches because anxiety convinced me I'd absolutely need them. Guess what? Never used a single one. Even standing on the very front upper decks where you feel the most motion, it honestly wasn't bad. Our brains are funny. Sometimes they prepare us for battles that never happen. But I still encourage you to pack something for motion sickness if you are someone who needs it. All right, let's talk about the ship. The moment that I really looked around, I realized, holy crap, I am literally on a traveling city. Restaurants, theaters, bars, pools, coffee shops, lounges, shopping, entertainment, thousands of people, all floating. It honestly felt like science fiction there for a minute. And when we pulled away from Seattle, there was this huge sail away party. Music, dancing, drinks, people cheering, everyone waving goodbye. It was impossible not to smile. We also had Norwegian Cruise Line's free at sea package. And now before I talk about any of that, I need to tell you I get $0 from any of this. I'm not promoting anything. I have no fun little discount codes to give you. I'm just sharing my experience. So we chose Norwegian Cruise Line. We sailed on the Norwegian Bliss, and we had their free at sea package, which bundles perks like specialty dining, beverage options, and other benefits depending on the package that you select. For us, it made the experience feel far more relaxing because we weren't constantly thinking about every little purchase. If you're comparing cruise options, it is worth looking very closely at what's included in the fare versus what costs extra, because there are surprise charges that will pop up if you don't read the fine print. We decided to add on the unlimited beverages package because they also charge for non-alcoholic beverages like soda and like bottled water and all that stuff. And yes, the drinks were fantastic. I became slightly obsessed with the Mango Meltdown frozen drink. Oh my gosh, amazing. And my husband and I are not drinkers, so we were not going to do the drink package, but I'm so glad we did because for a week we punished our liver. Not too bad, but more than usual, which is like usually 0. Again, we don't drink anymore. But anyway, and then there were duck fart shots. Yes, that is a real thing. It's an Alaskan layered shot, traditionally made with coffee liqueur, Irish cream, and Canadian whiskey. Somehow, it's both ridiculous and delicious. At one point, we were convincing everyone sitting near us at the bar to try one. I consider this a public service. Okay, so our first specialty dinner was at Cagney's Steakhouse the night we embarked. I got fancy, dressed up, actually put makeup on for the first time in like forever, ordered the petite filet. Fantastic. The bread? Meh. I have strong opinions about restaurant bread. I like it warm, soft, comforting. Not bread that feels emotionally unavailable. Anyway, I went to bed completely exhausted after receiving a sum total of 4 hours sleep in a 2-day time period. But I realized something. I was happier than I had been in a very long time. This is again when I got teared up while writing this episode. Damn, this girl needs to go on more vacations. Okay, day 2. Peace at sea. This is, so we boarded the ship at 11 a.m. on, what the hell day was it? On Saturday. And so Saturday was all about getting on the ship, getting acclimated to, what you've got to do, all that fun stuff. And then they had, the sail away party. Then, like I said, we went to Cagney's for dinner and we went to bed. So day 2 was all day at sea, no ports. One of my favorite memories happened that very morning that I woke up. 5 a.m. Everyone else asleep. I wandered up to the observation lounge by myself, grabbed coffee, sat alone in a lounge chair, watching our journey through the giant windows that spanned the entire front part of the lounge. It started raining gently. The ocean stretched forever. There was absolutely nothing but water. The thing that I feared, ironically enough. I thought it would bother me not to see land. It was peace. No notifications, no emails, no doom scrolling, no one needing anything from me. Just me. Coffee, rain, the ocean, and silence. Blessed freaking silence. As women, we spend so much of our lives being available, being reachable, being responsible, being needed. For the first time in a very long time, I wasn't. I eventually wandered back to my room. I realized that my husband probably forgot where I had disappeared to because I had told him I was leaving while he was barely awake and we could not communicate via phone because we had no service. But I got back and everyone was still sleeping. So I curled up on the couch, finished my coffee, read my Kindle. Absolute perfection. Breakfast was at the complimentary garden cafe buffet, where there were plenty of healthy choices, but it was quite crowded. While eating, though, I spotted sharks in the water and schools of fish slicing through the ocean's surface. That was so cool. They were too small to be whales or dolphins, but watching wildlife while eating breakfast is not something that happens in everyday life. It was pretty cool. Later, after a couple of duck fart shots, we somehow embarked on what can only be described as a drunken mystery quest. None of us actually knew what we were trying to accomplish. I think maybe we wanted to find the absolute front of the ship. I don't remember what it's called. I forgot all the ship terms already. Aft and starboard, I don't know, whatever. But apparently, the front of the ship was closed off. Probably because everyone wants their Rose and Jack Titanic moment. Dinner that evening was at Le Bistro, another specialty dining. Again, fantastic meal. Again, emotionally disappointing bread. But the conversation was fantastic. We were there, my husband and I went on the cruise with his brother and his brother's wife. And so they live on the other side of the country, and so we don't get to see them very often. We talked so long that eventually we realized we were literally the last people in the restaurant. They were probably wondering if we planned to move in. All right, next day. The first Alaskan port that we stopped in was Sitka. Sitka has a fascinating history. Once the capital of Russian America, before Alaska was sold to the U.S. in 1867, the town still reflects both Tlingit indigenous heritage and Russian influence through its architecture and history, and that's pretty cool. Again, I got up early that morning. Again, coffee. Again, observation lounge. This time, a pod of whales surfaced near the ship. I jumped up in excitement and immediately realized I forgot my glasses. Apparently, whales look significantly cooler when you can actually see them. Lesson learned. Never leave your glasses behind in your room. But I will say, those quiet mornings by myself on the ship became a gratitude practice. I realized how grateful I was that I couldn't endlessly scroll on my phone. The cruise app worked, my camera worked, my notes app worked, but otherwise, the world disappeared. It reminded me that constant connection isn't actually connection. Sometimes disconnecting is exactly what reconnects us to ourselves. I also found myself reflecting on something deeper. Being a woman has taught me resilience. Living with lupus has taught me resilience. Was I exhausted? Absolutely. Was my pain level through the roof? Yes. Did I want to curl up in bed? 100%. Would I have traded any of these cool experiences to stay comfortable? Not for a second. Discomfort isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's simply the price of admission for extraordinary experiences. All right, back to Sitka. Our travel partners decided to go on a very lengthy hike once we got off the ship. My husband and I only hiked 4 miles through various parts of Sitka, spotting bald eagles along the way, so that was cool. We also visited the Alaska Raptor Center, which is a nonprofit rehabilitation facility that rescues injured birds of prey and releases those that recover well enough to survive in the wild. Watching that work firsthand was inspiring. And I got to see an owl that looked into my very soul. Yes, this is him. Isn't he cool? And then lunch at the Coldwater Bar and Grill included seafood chowder for me. It was fine, not life-changing, but replenished depleted nutrients from the hike. Back on the ship, though, nature stole the show again. From our balcony, we watched seals and bald eagles battling over fish in the water below. Another tip, bring binoculars. Trust me, you never know when nature is about to put on a National Geographic episode right outside your cabin. Okay, our next port the next day was in Juneau, which is Alaska's capital. Juneau is unique because there are no roads connecting it to the rest of North America. Most visitors arrive by boat or plane, making it one of the most isolated state capitals in the United States. The scenery that morning was absolutely breathtaking. Then, some mild panic. Trying to figure out transportation to Mendenhall Glacier was incredibly confusing for us, but eventually we found transportation. It also cost us $168 round trip for my husband and I. Ouch. But the glacier? Worth it. The Mendenhall Glacier is approximately 13 miles long and is part of the massive Juneau ice field. Sadly, like many glaciers around the world, it has been retreating over recent decades due to climate change, making visits like these both awe-inspiring and bittersweet. We also stopped by the legendary Red Dog Saloon. Naturally, more duck fart shots. And a reindeer fart shot. Alaska really commits to its beverage names. My husband could not choke down another duck fart, so he got the reindeer fart, which replaces the whiskey with peppermint. Anyway, there was plenty of shopping. There are jewelry stores everywhere, on the ship, in every single port you go to, except the next one. I think the next one is Icy Strait Point. I'll talk about that in a minute. Very remote. But anyway, the thing I absolutely loved, the people. Everyone in Alaska was incredibly friendly. Unless you jaywalk. Apparently that is taken very seriously in Alaska. Cross in the wrong place and someone will enthusiastically yell, "Crosswalk!" Message received. Once back aboard the ship that evening, the captain took a scenic route close to another glacier before we finally crashed from complete exhaustion. And the views were breathtaking. This is where having a balcony room was stellar. Okay, next day, Icy Strait Point. This was our big wildlife day, or it was supposed to be. Up at 5 a.m, again, by 6 a.m., we headed out for a bear and whale excursion. Icy Strait Point is owned by the nearby Hunaklingit community and was developed to create sustainable tourism while preserving local culture. It's one of the more remote cruise destinations in Alaska. So with an experienced guide, we hiked through the wilderness, focusing on staying on the wooden path to avoid the sinkholes. I totally forgot what they were called as I was concentrating more on trying to stay alive. We got to hear stories of bears walking the same exact wooden path that we were on, while at the same time being consoled that we probably wouldn't get eaten. Apparently bears like easy meals, and clearly we humans are anything but easy. We tend to be a complex bunch. So the bears tend to avoid us. And then after the bear hunt, we boarded a boat and began the whale watch. So, did we see bears? No. Did we see black-tailed deer? Yes. Humpback whales? Also yes. Sea lions? Another yes. Totally worth it. And by this point, I was barely functioning from sleep deprivation. I had also smashed my knee into a cabinet that morning because apparently my body wanted additional challenges. Yet, I was still happy. That fascinated me. Sometimes our emotional state matters more than our physical comfort. Next stop, Ketchikan. And finally, bear. Success. We got to watch a bear walking through a creek right downtown. Completely surreal. And if you're watching the video I took right now, I think I should get some sort of novice tech medal for figuring out how to embed it into this podcast video. If you're not watching the bear video, I should cut this entire monologue, but in a moment of self-deprecation, I probably decided to shame myself into leaving it in to prove how totally technically inept I can be. Moving on. Ketchikan is often called the salmon capital of the world because of its abundant salmon runs. It is also known for its colorful waterfront and extensive collection of native Alaskan totem poles. They were totally cool. Unfortunately, we were there a couple of weeks too early to see the salmon run. Honestly, I wish we'd had more time in Ketchikan. Our port time there was too short to do everything that I wanted to accomplish. But we hiked through forested trails and climbed what felt like endless stairs, including part of the Married Man's Trail. You can look that one up on your own so that I don't get sidetracked on a rant about the patriarchy. And yes, I ate a salmon donut from Jellyfish Donuts. It is something you have to do. Before you judge me, try it first. It was surprisingly delicious. All right. Here we are at the end of the cruise. We made a final brief evening stop in Victoria, British Columbia, before cruising back to Seattle. Honestly, by then, I was peopled out. I was sore as hell. My lupus was screaming at me for pushing my body so hard all week. Social battery, gone. Vacation battery, almost gone. Home battery, fully charged. Sometimes it's okay to admit that even amazing vacations have an expiration date. The next morning, we returned to Seattle. I got on a bus, went straight to the airport, and thought, I am officially done. There is a unique joy that comes from returning home after an incredible adventure. You appreciate your own bed in ways you never imagined, even if you're walking straight back into the nightmare that you left. Okay, so let's bring this back to something bigger. This cruise wasn't just a vacation. It was exposure therapy. In psychology, one of the most effective evidence-based treatments for anxiety is gradual exposure. Instead of avoiding what scares us, we carefully approach it in manageable ways. Over time, the brain learns that the feared outcome is far less likely, or far more manageable, than anxiety predicted. If I had listened to my anxiety, I never would have seen whales from a quiet observation deck. I never would have hiked through Sitka. I never would have stood in front of a glacier. I never would have watched bald eagles fighting over fish from my balcony. I never would have discovered that a salmon donut is somehow delicious. And I never would have experienced the deep peace that came from being disconnected from my phone and fully connected to the present moment. Anxiety wants uncertainty. Life offers experiences. If we wait until we feel completely fearless, we may wait forever. Friends, this week I want to challenge you. First, identify one thing that anxiety has convinced you not to do. It doesn't have to be a cruise. It could be attending a class, traveling somewhere new, speaking up in a meeting, going to dinner alone, or saying yes to an opportunity that you've been avoiding. Second, ask yourself, if fear wasn't making this decision, what would my values choose? Let your values, not your anxiety, be in the driver's seat. Third, break the challenge into manageable steps. Confidence does not appear all at once. It grows every time you prove to yourself that you can tolerate discomfort. Fourth, celebrate effort, not perfection. You don't have to enjoy every moment. You just have to show up. And finally, remember that discomfort and danger are not the same thing. Anxiety often treats them as identical, but they aren't. Sometimes discomfort is simply evidence that you are growing. All right, Hive, I'm going to keep this week's affirmation short and sweet. Your comfort zone may protect you from fear, but it also protects you from wonder. To turn that into an affirmation, my comfort zone may protect me from fear, but it also protects me from wonder. Ladies, please don't allow fear to keep you in your comfort zone. Don't allow fear to rob you from the wonder, the joy, and the beauty that is out there waiting for you. Queens, this trip reminded me that life doesn't get bigger because our fear gets smaller. Life gets bigger because we decide to live anyway. I am so grateful that I didn't let my anxiety make this decision for me, because beyond my comfort zone was an entire world waiting to amaze me. Sometimes, the greatest gift we can give ourselves is not certainty. It's permission to be surprised by how capable we really are. My friends, if today's episode inspired you, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message, leave a comment, or head over to our Facebook group and tell me, what is one adventure that your anxiety has been trying to talk you out of? Let's all encourage each other to take one brave step this week. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Hint Hive, Amplifying Women's Voices. Leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform, and share this episode with another amazing woman who needs a reminder that courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to live life fully anyway. And dear Riverside, who I record this podcast through, if you would bring back the pause record button, that would be fantastic, because I wouldn't have to have this embarrassing ending to my episode with my light malfunction that happened. All right, ladies, until next time, keep challenging the patriarchy, keep challenging your fears, keep amplifying women's voices, and as always, be bold, be brave, be unapologetically you.